a Halloween treat. Can you say it? Scared Silly. A Halloween treat. Oh, here's our E and our A together. That means the E talks. Eat. Very good.
Wait, you forgot to read.
Okay, a note to the reader. The story you're about to read is told by a dog, but Harold is no ordinary dog. He has written other books about his family, the Monroes, and about his friends, Chester, a cat, Howie, a dachshund puppy, and Bunicula, a most unusual rabbit. When Harold sent this story to me, he enclosed the following note. Halloween is usually a lot of fun in our house. The Monroes really get into the spirit of things with homemade costumes and decorations and yummy treats. I could hardly wait, but this Halloween was different. Oh, the costumes and the jack-o'-lantern and the candy were the same, but something new was added, a real reason to be scared. I still get goosebumps, or are they ghost bumps? What do you think about it? I hope my story won't keep you awake at night, but if it does, just remember, even scary stories can have happy endings. Ready? All day long, the sky had been crawling with clouds as mean and restless as ghosts on the prowl. There's going to be a storm tonight, Chester predicted as Mrs. Monroe called us in to dinner, and we'll be all alone in the house. Who knows what might happen? What do you mean? Howie asked. Howie was only a puppy, and I didn't want Chester scaring him. So Isn't that your word?
Yeah.
What is it? Very good. He means we get sick to our stomachs if we eat too many treats. Howie looked at Chester. Chester looked at me. Something like that, kid, he
said.
Howie gulped. Nice going, Chester, I muttered over my food dish. You just had to frighten him, didn't you? Well, it is Halloween, Harold. I've heard about Halloween, Howie stammered. That's when the goblins come out to play, and the witches and the ghosts and the ghouls. Don't forget the skeletons,
said
Chester. They'd be hurt to the bone if you let them out. Get it?
No.
Hurt to the bone. Oh, you got a little cut. You're hurt too? Howie darted from the room, his toenails clicking madly on the linoleum, while Chester chuckled. Very funny, I
said.
Oh, come on, Harold. Don't be such a party pooper. Being scared is what Halloween is all about. I guess you're right, I
said.
Very good. Oh. Excuse me, I'm getting cough. Remembering the harmless scares of Halloween past. I looked around. It seemed like an ordinary enough Halloween. Mr. Monroe was busy carving a
jack-o'-lantern.
Yes, a jack-o'-lantern. Cool. We need to do that for Halloween. Toby and Pete were fighting because they didn't want to have to go trick-or-treating together. You walk too slow, Pete told his younger brother. You run ahead and try to lose me, Toby
said.
Boys,
said
Mrs. Monroe, who was rushing to finish the costumes she and Mr. Monroe were wearing to a party that night.
A skeleton for the mom.
Yeah. Ooh, I wonder what he is. It's kind of like orangey or yellow.
Let's see at the end.
Do you remember?
No.
Bunicula was sleeping in his cage. I knew he would wake up once it was dark, and I wondered if he was looking forward to Halloween. After all, since he is a vampire rabbit. At least Chester says so. I imagine Halloween might be a special night for him. I didn't think much about it, though. Eating always makes me drowsy. What does drowsy mean? You're sleepy. That's drowsy. And it wasn't long before I was sound asleep. They're all asleep, aren't they? You too? By the time I woke up, it was dark outside. The Monroes were gone. The wind was howling.
Oh.
Very good. The windows rattled. the doors, and Howie shook. "What a racket," he cried. "What's going on?" "Oh, nothing," Chester
said
with a yawn. "Just some creaking bones." "It's a storm," I told Howie, giving Chester a dirty look. Howie jumped up onto the sofa and gazed out the window. "Who are they?" he asked.
the goblins.
The goblins, you're right. Goblins looking for puppies to munch. Ooh, isn't that your word?
Where? Oh, said
Chester. "Kids in costumes," I explained. "They're trick-or-treating." "Look, Howie, Chester is just trying to frighten you." That's the fun of Halloween, being scared. But there's nothing really to be frightened of. There was a gust of wind. And all the lights went out. "Except maybe the dark," I added in a tiny voice. The three of us huddled by the sofa, looking around at the eerie shadows cast by the jack-o'-lantern's light. From across the room, Bunukula stared at us, his eyes gleaming, his teeth glistening, his shadow making him seem twice as big as usual. There was something in the way he looked at us that held us spellbound. I mean, look at how big their eyes. That's called spellbound. Like they're just staring. Yeah, like that. Tap, tap, tap. There came a knocking at the door. Howie was out of sight before I could say, "It's only a tree branch." "There's no tree near the front door," Chester pointed out. "True," I
said.
Tap, tap, tap. "Trick or treat?" I asked. Slowly the doorknob began to turn. "Trick!" Chester yelped. We ran behind the big brown velvet armchair. Howie was cowering there already, panting rapidly. Who's at the door?" he asked. "The wind," I answered. The door flew open. "Uncle Harold," Howie said. "Yes?" "Does the wind wear a hat?"
What's the witch?
There before us, not 10 feet away, stood a witch. "What a night," she
said.
Her voice was so rough it seemed full of gravel. She dropped a bag on the floor, rubbed her hands, and the door slammed shut. The witch came toward us, but stopped when she reached the jack-o'-lantern. In its light we could see her long, crooked nose, the hairy warts on her wrinkled cheeks. You see that?
It had that somewhere.
Where's the warts? Very good. Ugh. The spider dangling from her hat. "Help!" Howie yiped. "What was that?" snarled the witch, turning her head. "Quiet," Chester said to Howie. "Do you want to end up as a Halloween treat?" The witch's eyes darted all about. Then she shrugged and carried the jack-o'-lantern off to the kitchen. We didn't move. We hardly dared breathe. "What is she doing here?" Chester asked. "Why would she pick our house?" "There's only one reason I can think of." I followed his eyes. Bunukula.
Look. It's like this.
Spellbound. The vampire rabbit and the witch. They're in cahoots. Don't you see? What's cahoots? "I thought we lived in Centerville," said Howie. "Cahoots isn't a place," said Chester. "It means they're cooking something up together." We heard the sound of pots and pans in the kitchen. "Maybe it's fudge," I
said.
Hopefully. "And maybe it's a witch's brew,"
said
Chester. "Follow me." We crept across the living room floor and nudged the kitchen door open with our noses. What we saw made us gasp. Burning candles filled the room. Something was bubbling in a huge pot on the stove. "I was right," Chester
said.
"She's concocting a witch's brew." In a voice that crackled and croaked, the witch sang a strange melody as she stirred the pot. "Spells," Chester mumbled. "Chants," Chester grumbled. "Boil, boil, toil and trouble." All of us